Hey, you guys, this is the conclusion of the video that I started last night and posted about toxic shame and outgrowing our own narcissism. And I will in the future get out a video that's strictly talking about outgrowing narcissism, because that's a very general narcissism, and being a narcissist, all that is, people just kind of generalize it, and it's actually quite complex, because often we ask ourselves, what are the differences? What can a narcissist heal? And it can get so deep and complex. I know that sounds like a contradiction when I say outgrowing our narcissism, but then people say a narcissist cannot change. They cannot grow. They cannot heal because they cannot self-reflect. It gets deep and complex. That would mean one would really have to study narcissism and really understand the roots of it, how we're born with a primary narcissism, how all that needs to come off the balance in childhood with the self-esteem and all that, and how it all can develop in a person, and how these things really need to balance out. We all have narcissism, okay? We need some. Any professional will tell you that. We all have a certain amount of healthy narcissism, healthy confidence that we need to have, or we wouldn't even get up and do anything. But that's another video for another day. I'm going to finish up where I left off last night on the toxic shame, my last relationship, kind of pulling through the rest of that story real quick. But yes, in the future, I will get into what I think. I'm not a professional, although I had a professional therapist off and on for 20-something years. And I've studied psychology a lot. I've had a lot of experience with people with mental illness in my family, friends, romantic partners. And, you know, I've actually done quite a bit of work with people. That's kind of what we do. We would all counsel each other and, you know, discuss our issues. And I really like to learn about people. So I have had a lot of experience being with different types of people, with different types of narcissism, just all kinds of things. But I will get into what my experience has been with my own narcissism and coming from trauma and watching it evolve over the years and how it played out for me, and other examples of people that, because I've known people that were highly narcissistic and then watched them grow and change. That's why I've always believed that certain people can do it. But there's certain factors there, okay? It's all going to depend on how high on the narcissistic spectrum they are. And without a professional doing testing and really working with that person, it's just really hard to know. But from what I've seen, it really all depends on where they came from, what kind of abuse and trauma, what actually caused their high-level narcissism in the first place. Was it overindulgence and not trauma at all? Was it lack of consequences? Or was it abuse and trauma? I think it varies. A child who was neglected versus a child who may have been beaten and over-controlled by the parent versus a kid who was completely neglected, they grow up to be different levels of narcissism and different manifestations of it. Oh my God, it can get so complex. And I've observed these patterns and gotten close to people with different levels of it. So I'm going to get a video out in the future about that because it fascinates me, it interests me. I think it's good to have the knowledge and understanding. I think some people can absolutely outgrow it and balance out their empathy and healthy narcissism, depending where they came from, what's going on there, how willing they are to self-reflect. Was there any intervention at any time in their younger life? You know, I've questioned that myself before. How far does it have to go, like, before it's too late that they can't outgrow it, that it's just too late, they can't? And it probably depends on whether they have full-on narcissistic personality disorder or not, just high tendencies. I think there's a lot of things that may factor into whether or not a high-level narcissist can grow and change. I think there's a lot that factors into it. So it's just a very generalized statement when you hear, a narcissist can never change. And then people are like, oh, that's a narcissist. They're acting shitty and they're doing this. And then the next 6 months or 8 months or a year later, you see them, they're a whole different person. it just depends. I really think it depends. Anyway, that'll be another video. So, toxic shame. Let me finish this up. Last night where I ended up, where the video cut off, I was discussing how I went through a change getting close to age 30. I was in a lot of pain, and that caused my traumatic childhood, narcissistic alcoholic father who was emotionally, physically, sexually abusive, all those things. He was manipulative, and he was also very controlling of me. He got his needs met through his children. He smothered me and controlled my identity, my personality. But he also had this weird, he lifted my ego a lot too. He didn't necessarily tear down my ego. He controlled the shit out of me and would take away things I loved, and he was very jealous of me, obsessed with me almost. But there were also times where he would, be very loving and nurturing, almost like a mother. It was the only love we really got because my mother was pretty withdrawn and cold, turned a blind eye to a lot of stuff. So he would lift my ego a lot too, Oh, that's daddy's girl, and oh, I'm proud of you, you got that. He would, and that's important for a child, because I have been around middle-aged people who only got ridiculed as children. They didn't get, see, it just depends. All of that depends on the abuse mixed with the ego boosting, or abuse and ridicule, or ridicule with no ego boosting. All of that is going to factor into what kind of narcissist and how high on the spectrum they go, and abandonment issues and need for approval and being stuck in that shit. That's why I had a weird mix growing up, man. I said in that first video that, what was it I said? And I wanted to clarify it. That, I was talking about how I had low self-esteem as a girl. I would go to school and I would feel ugly and stupid, and my family was poor. My grandmother was a teacher. She lived next door, and she helped us pay a lot of things and put me through ballet and made sure we have nice things, but my family was struggling. We didn't have a lot of nice clothes, and we didn't have all the latest toys, and I just never fit in at school. I never felt right because I was being abused. I was keeping a lot of secrets, and by the time I hit 12, I was like, fuck this place, I'm out of here. Fuck these kids. Y'all are kids. I was a little adult. I was ready. I hit the streets and running around with adults. But yes, I did have that very deep insecurity in me for many years, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, growing up. Felt ugly, stupid, not good enough, not pretty enough. All the guys liked other girls, even though I was being used up by a lot of guys and, very promiscuous. But I will say this at the same time. It seems like kind of a contradiction. I also had a certain confidence as a child. It's weird. I was often kept in my room alone a lot, controlled, smothered, not allowed to go out, not allowed to be around other kids. Abusers are very controlling of their families. And I had a lot of brothers and sisters, but I had my own room, and I loved being in there. I had a great imagination, a great creativity. I would daydream and make plans and write songs and create. I was a very determined child. A lot of that could have come from getting the fuck beat out of me, get the fuck back up and come here. Knock you fucking down across the room. Come here. It happened. But I don't know where I got that defiant determination to fucking survive or else. Just like the Terminator, boy, crawling with that one arm. That motherfucker was crawling. I was like that. I got pictures of me at 12, just had my little fingerless glove and thought I was tough, and just, I hit about 12 and I'm like, man, looking at my family and all this shit, and I'm like, you fucking people suck. I'm fucking out of here. I was a defiant, determined little kid. How the hell I survived in the streets, I don't even know. It was crazy, but so I did have a certain level of confidence and self-esteem and determination as a youngster. I sure did. But at the same time, I had low self-esteem and insecurities and felt ugly, stupid, and this and that in certain contexts and situations. So all of that can be in one person. I know it sounds complex. It depends on who you were raised by, what you went through. I was raised around some extremes. My mother and father were extremely different influences, different backgrounds. It's really all going to depend. Some people are just really multi-dimensional and they understand so much about other human beings because they've been through so much, so many experiences in their frame of reference. So yes, I did feel all of that at once, okay? So all of my life, I guess I've had both. I've had to battle with insecurities, not feeling good enough, yada, 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 because of the trauma and abuse and certain things. But then at the same time, I've always had something in the back of my mind and deep inside of me that said, hell no, we're not going down like that, baby. Get up. Get up. And you make the fucking best of who you are right now. That determination, it might not even be confidence at all. It might be just fucking plain out brutal determination. I don't know. Defiant determination. To just live the best I am, best I can for who I am. I don't know. But I wanted to clarify that, okay? And as I got, older, I got appointed to a therapist. She's a lovely person. I've had her off and on throughout my life. And she really taught me a lot of things I needed to know about self-respect, boundaries, checking myself on my boundaries, holding myself accountable. Lots of things, loving myself. I had to go through a lot of training after being violated, molested, raped, different things. I had to go through a lot. I had panic attacks, PTSD, night terrors. God, I could make videos for centuries, but, I had to do a lot of work on how to love myself truly. How to really get into that. I had to do a lot of self-study. A lot of people look at that like it's arrogance. It's not. It's not. It's after going through a lot of brutal trauma and having to work really hard because I hated my fucking self. But even though I would go around all determined and, tough-ass personality, I still went through a lot of hell inside, man. I had years where I was hard on myself. Self-destructive to a degree. I never wanted to go over a certain edge. I just had that in me. But, yeah, I could be self-destructive. I went through all kinds of things. Times where I wanted to harm myself, beat myself, burn myself. I went through a self-destructive stint. But for the most part, thank God, because of therapy and really trying to cling to those really positive people who taught me really good coping skills. Thank God, okay? That is so important for a child who's been through trauma, violence, any of that stuff. All right, but the toxic shame, I told you guys the story of the crossover at age 30, how I remember the trigger point, the click off in my brain where I just got flat sick and tired of who I was. I got tired of it, and mainly it was because I was hurting in a certain relationship. And I didn't like how he was doing me. But I told you I had to respect his honesty. But it still hurt me that he just didn't want to be with me. He wanted to go here, there, and everywhere. And I was in a lot of pain. I mean, suffering about it, hurting bad. And I knew I had been going around sleeping with this one and that one and somebody's husband. And I had caused other women pain. And I guess that's that choice. That's that timeline. You can choose to go one timeline or the other. You can continue to be the narcissist and go, fuck this. I'm hurting so bad. I'm going to go get somebody else's man. I'm going to do it again. That is what a high-level narcissist who has no intention of changing does. They stay in that emotional immaturity, that response, those defense mechanisms forever. Now, I don't know what the determining factors there are, why I was able to change over, because I was. And I know several other people that were extremely narcissistic when I first met them. Just shitty. Using people and going around doing this and going around doing that. And 3 or 4 years into our friendship, noticing they're not doing those things anymore. Now, there's some factors. I told you I'd get a video out about it later on. Some factors that come into play there. I've also noticed that people that like to read a lot, people that are willing to study, learn, spirituality is a factor in it, I believe. That's just me from my experience. Okay, when mine kicked over, my spirituality played a part in it. Having some higher power Just getting older, growing up more, maturing. The brain was able to mature. I don't know if drugs and alcohol factor in. They probably do with people. I wasn't doing a lot of drugs and alcohol. I never did. Now, I did get addicted to opiates at 38, but that's another day. 3 years. But most of my life, no. I didn't do a lot of drugs and alcohol. So I think there's just a lot of factors there, but I was in so much pain, and it clicked in my brain. Oh my God, I don't want anyone to ever feel what I am feeling right now. And really never before that moment, that time, had I felt like that for others. Oh, fuck your wife, you know? Fuck. I didn't like that girl. I didn't like that person. And so that is what clicked off in my brain. I remember the empathy kicking in more and more and more. The more spiritual I got, the more I studied that and other things factoring in. But it was pain. It was suffering that drove me to change over. I don't ever want anyone else to feel this suffering. And if I don't do something about myself, I started learning about energy. These things matter. See, a lot of highly narcissistic people don't study. They don't read. They can't learn. They're so used to checking out because of trauma that they avoid all the good shit too. They are so hell-bent on avoiding their pain and the broken ego, whatever broke them. They don't want any pain, and they're so defensive that they actually avoid learning too. Learning the good shit they need to know. All of it, emotional intelligence and social skills and communication skills and coping skills and everything, picking up on people's energy and verbal cues and social cues and body language. They're just derp. There's a part of their brain that is really just like derp. And they're not dumb. A lot of them have very high IQs. It's just, yeah. So, but that happened to me. I just did not want anyone else to feel the pain I was feeling, and I felt sorry and bad for the women that I may have hurt as a woman. I remember when that empathy kicked off like that. Like, my God, she didn't deserve that. Okay? And I just went forward from there, growing in my empathy. I started slamming the brakes on a lot of my behaviors, and I started changing. And that is the difference, okay, between learning to balance your narcissism with your empathy, back that shit down. And we all have some narcissism. I use mine for whatever, pulling my ass out of the dumps, creating productive things, and if I need to protect myself with it, I can become highly narcissistic as fuck. Mine. You know, but it's different, okay? Now, the other narcissists, I don't know if it's they had more damage. I don't know what the deal is. Maybe they have full-on narcissistic personality disorder. And I still need to do more research if that's hereditary, if you can just have that. I know it develops in people from trauma and different things, but so that person, it's either in their brain that they cannot self-reflect and they cannot develop this empathy, or they just don't, okay? And they go on to use and abuse others, a lot of them for the rest of their lives. Manipulation in the whole narcissistic web. I have read somewhere that in some high-level narcissists, the part of the brain that houses the department of empathy, I believe it's the amygdala, like the prefrontal cortex or whatever, that part of their brain is smaller than in normal, non-pathological people. Now, I don't know. I don't know if that's from birth. I don't know if that's from childhood trauma, brain damage. I know that trauma affects our brain, and it can damage our brain, the development of our brain, and, you know, all that stuff. So, but yeah, that's what happened to me. And I told you guys that my boyfriend of the last 6 years that we just recently broke up, narcissistic person, alcoholic, narcissistic abuse situation. It was very traumatic for me. When I met him years and years and years back, I was finishing that story, how I felt terrible because he showed up one day, and the thing was, he told me that he and his wife, duh, I knew in the back of my mind, okay, Yeah, right. He told me they were in an open relationship, that they, whatever, they were having another baby, but it was kind of a sudden thing. He made it really sound like they were both cheating on each other. She cheated on him all the time. A lot of times people are going to do that. If they're cheating, they're going to lie and tell you their partner's mean. She's mean. She won't have anything to do with me. And I thought in the back of my mind, look, I wasn't born yesterday. Yo ass probably did something to her. But one thing led to another. And again, at that time, I was still in my own higher narcissism, where I didn't give a shit. We went out, we hung out, shit happened. All right. And then I didn't see him again for 8 years. So that's pretty much what happened. And I just wanted to make the point. I started that video last night because, I don't know, I guess I just wanted to get some things off my chest and be kind of an example because, oh, somehow he showed up back in my life. I never really thought I'd see that dude again. My life went on. The other boyfriend and I faded out. My life changed. I went to college. I was finished raising teenagers. You know, really learning to love myself. I did date a couple other people, but really, really growing in my self-respect, my boundaries, absolutely not wanting to get involved with anyone, married or girlfriends, just really doing my thing, you know. And Chad would actually keep up with me. About 4 years went by, and I finally heard from him, and he would message me 2 or 3 times a year on Facebook, asking me out to lunch. And I would say, no, not as long as you're married. That really happened. Years and years went by like that. And we would casually message back and forth, and I would say, no, not as long as you're married. Because I really had respect for his family. I knew that he did love his family and his kids and needed to be there with that. And I in no way wanted to disrespect that. So I just, nope. But years and years went by, and tragedy struck, and his marriage was crumbling after many, many years, and his child passed away. One of his children died suddenly, and it threw him into a mental break of some kind, okay? And so that is when, after not seeing him for 8 years later, 8 years, all of a sudden, he's in my inbox on Facebook again one day. Out of the blue, hey, want to go to lunch? And I'm like, hey, you know, I felt so bad for him because I had known him years ago.